Morning, everyone. So, I didn't get much sleep last night. I was in bed and notifications started going on my phone. I go, what's going on? And it's all about an article in the Times today, which of course gets published on their online version the previous night. And Suella Braverman has written something um, for the Times. It's incredibly incendiary. It's related to the pro-Palestinian march this Saturday. Now, for those who aren't aware what she's actually done, it's like everything else she does, it's complete word salad. So it's actually quite hard to know in what order to do it. So first of all, she's attacked the Met Police. So what's happened is there's been intense political pressure on the Met Police to cancel that march this weekend. There's no justification for doing so. Let me just be clear for everyone, because there might be some people outside the country and stuff like that who don't really know how we do things. So we have two dates in November where we commemorate like the fallen. We have Armistice Day, which is always on the 11th of November to commemorate the armistice in 1918. And we have Remembrance Sunday, which is always on Sunday. The far right are calling this is our sacred Remembrance Weekend. There is no such thing as Remembrance Weekend. Doesn't exist, right? That is because Armistice Day is always on the 11th. So it's actually hardly ever on a Saturday. So this idea of this weekend doesn't exist. It just happens to be on a Saturday this year, quirk of fate. Had it not been on a Saturday, this wouldn't be a thing. Well, they'd still probably try and make it something. The second thing to note is, so what do we do on Armistice Day? Well, at 11 a.m., we have a 2-minute silence. That's it. You know, when I was a teacher in schools, you'd stop your class at 11 a.m., 2-minute silence. I would usually project some images on the screen. That was it. If you're I've been in supermarkets sometimes at 11 a.m. on Armistice Day. It's there's usually something comes on the tannoy, and actually a lot of shoppers do just stand in silence for 2 minutes. Some other people carry on, buying their crisps. But that's it. There isn't really anything else. And the other thing is, sometimes someone does something a bit grander. So there is actually going to be an event at the Cenotaph this Saturday to mark Armistice Day. The organizer of that event said that the pro-Palestinian march should go ahead, right? The other thing to note is this going of, this is disgraceful, it's disrespecting the Cenotaph. The march isn't going anywhere near the Cenotaph. It's not the closest point it gets is 2 miles away. It's going nowhere near. So this is pure culture war, but it's like the most toxic kind of culture war. Because what Braverman has done is she's attacked the police for not banning it. The police, Samart Rowley, the Met Police Commissioner, thank God we got rid of Cressida Dick, he stood against that political pressure, right? He stood against it. So now both Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman are highly politicizing that move. And Sunak's basically said, right, it's all on him. He can take responsibility for everything. And now Braverman's basically said to every far-right thug in the country, come down to London, you're needed. She's basically saying, the way she's characterizing it in her article is she's saying the Cenotaph is at risk. It is not. The police aren't doing anything about it. So what do we do? Any ideas, lads? So all the National Front crew, who tomorrow will be at the Cenotaph, the ones with tattoos of swastikas on their necks, will be stood with everyone else. They'll be there. So they'll probably be down on Saturday along with a load of other nutters. Oh, that's what she wants. And she wants it all to kick off. It's utterly insane. Now, there was a comment earlier on about, sorry, Sonak has to sack her now. Right. I want to consider something else, because I was awake for like hours going through all this, right? So she's written this thing. You think, well, she's directly contradicted Rishi Sunak's position yesterday. Rishi Sunak yesterday agreed that the march should go ahead. He said it's in the interest of free speech. He accepted the police's assessment that it didn't represent a security threat. That doesn't mean to say that there won't be small pockets of agitators. You can get that. That is not a reflection on the wider march, right? So Rishi Sunak has said that the march should go ahead. right? He said he's uncomfortable with this, but it doesn't matter what he thinks, or it does matter what he says, so he shouldn't have said it. But he said it should go ahead. Suella Braverman saying it should not, and the police are being biased. So she's contradicted Rishi Sunak now. So you think to yourself, well, that's it. He's got to sack her. But inevitably, Suella Braverman was asked if Number 10 signed off on this article. She can't go writing things like this without having it gone through. Like, it doesn't just go through an editorial process at the Times, which I need to talk about in a minute. It goes through, it has to go through Downing Street. Like, you can't have cabinet ministers just writing stuff in the papers without it going through the party editorial process as well. So she was asked if she's gone rogue or if she got permission. She said that Rishi Sunak signed off on it. Now, that's very interesting because that now means one of two things. Either Rishi Sunak did sign off on it, in which case he is now deliberately creating a situation where his own government is contradicting itself. He says one thing, and he's allowing Suella Braverman to say something completely contradictory, mutually exclusive, as if it's like he's going to appeal to the moderate voter and she's going to appeal to the ERG, like Reform UK gammon nutters, and they can somehow coexist like that. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. Or she's lying and she didn't get it signed off, in which case she's not only published something that is directly at odds with Rishi Sunak's statement yesterday, which undermines his authority, such as it is, but she's lied as well. You can't. It's utterly insane. Everything she's doing here is insane. And, you know, I keep going to check the news. I'm going to have to do a video on this myself. And I'm just thinking, I'm going to have to record it quite late on the day because I might put the video out and then she gets sacked. Because I don't know what Rishi Sunak at some point has to be asked. He has to be asked. He has to come out, or his spokesperson has to come out. And that spokesperson will, because he'll hide away. His spokesperson will be asked, did Downing Street sign off on this? Because she says they did. That spokesperson cannot claim ignorance. They have to know. They will have to be able to say. And it's, the other thing as well, right? So another thing, in her article, quite inadvertently, I'm sure, it's just to show how ignorant and stupid she is, because I do need to call her stupid in a little bit. And you might be thinking, well, she's probably, is she really stupid or is she just unhinged? I think she might be a bit stupid. In this article, first of all, she keeps doubling down on calling the pro-Palestine march a hate march, right? And she's doubling down on that, as well as attacking the police. And she likens it to the marchers in Northern Ireland. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, when it comes to people in like England, particularly, when people in England mostly think about the marchers in Northern Ireland, like most people in England don't really know what the deal is. But when people in England think about marchers in Northern Ireland, they're only thinking of one march. That's the Orange Order marchers, right? Now, the Orange Order are the Unionists in Northern Ireland. They're the ones with whom the Conservatives align themselves, right? So, for example, the DUP are the major unionist party at the moment in Northern Ireland. They're the only other party in Westminster that can even stomach the Tories, particularly the way they've become now. And she's basically pissed them all off. It was quite funny because Jamie Bryson, who is a prominent unionist, one of the sort of on the extreme wing, and I'll read his tweet out. It says, at Suella Braverman, should have been clearer what she meant and what comparisons she was making. Obviously, she meant to equate hate marches with IRA terrorist event stroke commemorations, but the way it's been worded makes it seem the marching band parading tradition is included. This needs clarified urgently by the Home Secretary. And it's like, okay, she may come out later and say, oh, yeah, that's what I meant. 100% is not what she meant. 100% it is not what she meant. So she's basically created a load of political Molotov cocktails and lobbed them everywhere. Anyway, I'll go through a few comments here. Right, Colin's saying that any chance the sensible voters in Fareham and Waterlooville, which is the new constituency she will be standing in, could do the right thing. How many of them are sensible? Hardly any, I'm afraid. She is going to be standing in one of the safest possible seats. However, I will say this. So, as some people may know, I do not want Suella Braverman to become the Tory party leader even in opposition. Some people think, well, you know, it would make it much easier for Labour. She'll be an absolute disaster. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But it's not worth it. Look at the damage she's doing right now. She's literally trying to incite civil war. That's what she's trying to do. That will always be there if she's leader of the opposition. It will always be there. Because imagine we have a scenario where, let's say, a newspaper editor was to write what she's written. Well, there could be action against that. That's potentially a hate crime. I would argue that is a hate crime. It should certainly be investigated as such. Now, it is possible that under a Labour government, that it would be investigated as such. And that newspaper will be saying, no, you can't just write things like that. It's clearly incorrect and inflammatory, right? It's a hate crime. But if the leader of the opposition says it, and particularly if they say it in Parliament where they've got parliamentary privilege, and actually that still shouldn't exclude them from criminal investigations, but I bet it would. In fact, the fact she's getting away with it now shows it would. But the newspapers could then report on it, and they'd be just like saying, well, we're only reporting what the leader of the opposition's saying, potentially the next prime minister. So it makes those views seem like they can present them as mainstream. It's far too dangerous to allow her, to become leader of the opposition. Now, what I will say is this, and this is where I had to sort of explain in advance that I think she is actually a bit stupid in some ways. I think she's actually making her chances of becoming the next leader of the Conservatives less likely. I'll tell you why. Think about, there's three groups of Tory MPs, right? Think about three groups of Tory MPs. There's the Tory MPs, the sitting Tory MPs right now, who are going to lose their seats because they're not going to take part in the next leadership election. Because remember, before it goes to the members, Tory MPs have to whittle it down to two candidates. So the Tory MPs who are going to lose their seats, the ones who are MPs now, they get no say. Then there's the Tory MPs who are Tory MPs now and who will win their seats. They get a say. Then there's the new candidates. Because although you wouldn't imagine the Tories are going to win very many, if any, new seats, they are going to retain some of their existing seats. And there's a lot of Tory MPs stepping down. So that means there's going to be some new Tory MPs. So that's the third group. If you look at it, a lot of the people that Suella Braverman appeals to in the parliamentary party, you know, the likes of Lee Anderson and Jonathan Gullis and people like that, they're all the ones that are going to lose their seats. So Suella Braverman doesn't look like she's going to have a great deal of support after the election. I think she's not taking that into account. And here's the other thing. Of the people who are likely to be remaining, she's actively pissing them off. Because, first of all, some of them very genuinely are appalled at what she's doing to our national security. But secondly, it's supposed to be Rishi Sunak dictating the news cycles, right? Downing Street is supposed to be setting the news agenda, talking about the things that the government wants to talk about. She's forcing Rishi Sunak, she's forcing Downing Street to talk about what she wants to talk about. She is dictating the news cycle with her extreme behavior. That is pissing off, I don't know how many Tory MPs, but it must be, because it's harming their chances in the election. For what? To try and appeal to a small number of thugs, most of whom will still vote Reform UK anyway. Because at the election, bear in mind, it's not going to be Suella Braverman leading them. It's going to be Rishi Sunak, right? So I think there's a really good chance here. The saving grace is that Suella Braverman may actually be harming her chances of becoming Tory party leader. And that has to be the main hope, because I don't think she's going to fail to win her seat. Her seat is really incredibly safe. I was going to say safe as houses, but that's not really a great comment to talk about when you've got a Conservative government, when they could fall down at any time. Um, Braverman not being sacked is as big a mystery as Gavin Williamson's knighthood. Well, there's no mystery in either case. Williamson's knighthood was for his silence. It's really that simple. It's quite common, as I say, in politics to reward people for their silence. It's not unusual at all. In terms of why Sunak won't sack her, I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of a mystery there. Well, there's one of two possibilities, I suppose. The first is that Sunak is in on it. It is possible that he's in on it, that he thinks he can get the best of both worlds, that he can be presenting the more reasoned, nuanced view on things to appeal to moderates, and that she can appeal to the nutters. If that is what he thinks, he's playing with fire. I'm not convinced that is what he thinks. I think the most likely thing is he's just too weak. The reason being, so when we're talking about right, people keep saying that the Conservatives are looking at an autumn election next year. I can totally believe that Rishi Sunak wants the election next autumn. I accept that. I think, yeah, I can believe that. But his party has to remain stable enough to last that long. So we know that, or we suspect that there's somewhere between 20 and 25 confidence letters have gone in against Rishi Sunak. Now, the fear may be that if he sacks Suella Braverman, he creates a new group that at the moment are behaving themselves because she's the Home Secretary. And if he sacks her, they decide to put in letters and destabilize him. It could well be that both she and her supporters are insane enough to think that she can actually, because look at it this way, the Tories are headed for an election loss. It's that simple. They're headed for an election loss. Now, imagine if you think you can engineer another leadership contest and get Suella Braverman installed with a year to go, right? And think about the things and if you believe that Suella Braverman is the sort of person who can turn the Tory party fortunes around, because you're blinkered enough to think that a lot of voters are like aligned with that extreme way of thinking, it is possible that Sunak fears the fact if he sacks Braverman, he could be brought down. That's my speculation. Obviously, I don't get to talk to Tory MPs, but that is what I would think there. Say Braverman could issue the challenge against Sunak before the general election, and to spite Braverman, Sunak can call the general election to scupper his leadership challenge. Yeah, Sunak can call the the general election whenever he likes. I think he wants, like, Sunak is acting quite clearly, in my view, in order to feather his own nest. He's after money. He's after basically looting the country, and he wants as much time as he can to do that. So Sunak acting out of spite by calling a quick election doesn't help him, right? He wants the election, possibly. Again, we're speculating, but he wants the election next autumn. How does he maintain the stability of the party to get there? If he thinks he has to keep Braverman in cabinet to do that, that might explain what's going on. But if Braverman wants to be sacked, if she actually wants to be sacked, then it's then she's just going to become more extreme, isn't she? She's just going to become more extreme. And again, I want to know, there has to be a press conference today, not with Rishi Sunak, he'll stay well away, but with his, with some spokesperson. It must be asked whether he actually did sign off on it. Like, I'm just looking at the Guardian feed. So Chris Philp, who's the policing minister, he's in Suella Braverman's department. He's a Home Office minister. He's saying he doesn't know. I think it says here, doesn't know if Number 10 signed off on Braverman's article. That's what it's saying. So, my goodness me. Anyway, let's go through some more comment. What about the Sky News reporter saying that he'd heard at least one Labour MP thinks the reason why the King's speech was so slim is because Sunak is aiming for a May election? Yes, I saw some mention of that. I think there's a few Labour MPs think that. It's not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable. I'll tell you why. It makes sense. Because it's true that the King's speech, there wasn't very much legislative meat in it. And it's certainly true that. So what happens is, it's like once you've put your legislation through, if you ram it through in the next few months, it's like what you're going to do then. So yeah, there is, and my view has always been that May is much better for them than autumn. Autumn would be a disastrous time for them. But from Sunak's point of view, I can see, unless he thinks he can get what he wants done by May. If Sunak thinks whatever deals he needs to close for his father-in-law's company can be done by May, then yeah, sure. I don't think Sunak wants to keep putting up with this bullshit. I think he wants to make his money and then piss off to California. Preferably before criminal charges start being discussed over his little shenanigans in 2020. So yeah, I mean, my view still remains that May is more likely than autumn as a general election. I've not changed that view, even though I would say it's tilted more in favour of autumn, just because I can see the Tories just getting trapped, because it's like they're waiting for some favourable circumstances, and it's not happening. Like at the moment, they're thinking, well, maybe the Labour Party will self-destruct. No, it's not going to. In effect, Braverman is the anchor dragging the HMS Tory downwards. Oh, there's a whole load of anchors. No. She's the hole in the hull, actually. Rishi Sunak arguably is the anchor, stopping them going anywhere. She's the hole in the hull. And she's banned buckets. Our Home Secretary is mentally ill and needs help. The fact she's in a position of power is a major threat to security and stability of the UK. It is. The fact that she's Home Secretary makes it much worse, because she's supposed to be in charge of our homeland security, as the Americans would call it. In terms of being mentally ill, I don't know. I think she may just be completely without empathy, or like. I'd heard someone say yesterday that they still thought that Priti Patel was more evil because Priti Patel really believed in what she was doing, whereas their view is that Suella Braverman's just doing this for personal power. I don't agree. I actually don't agree. I do agree that Priti Patel was what you saw was what you got. But I think with Suella Braverman, I think she's an exaggeration. I don't think all of this is what she'd be doing if she didn't feel it was needed strategically. But I do think she's an exaggeration of herself. I think what we're getting from Braverman is what Braverman is like. Because if you look at Sunak, compared to Sunak, Sunak's trying to be something he's not, and it's failing. It's falling down because you can't keep up a pretense for that long. Suella Braverman, there's inconsistencies in her position, don't get me wrong, but only in the same way that she applies double standards. But there's no inconsistency in her behavior. And I just don't see that it makes sense to suggest that someone can keep up an act like this for as long as she is doing. So I think what we're getting from Braverman is Braverman. It's an exaggeration of it, but it is her. And Trump's terrifying if he returns. I fear for world peace. Yes, we have to hope that Trump is certainly prevented from becoming the president again. I do not even know what would happen then. But there we go. Vendetta saying this is why Starmer needs to revoke their passports on day one. Yeah, I don't think for all those people that try and say, oh, Labour are just going to be the same as the Tories, I don't think Starmer will be helping that view if he orders the cancellation of passports for people for no good reason. No, I don't think so. Um, Urgent question to Home Secretary, House of Commons, are you policing comments? Not going to appear personally, send a junior minister. She often does that, though. The last thing she wants to do is to face. And this has often been the way. She absolutely hates going up against Yvette Cooper. Hates it. So she often sends a junior minister along. Right, whether if it's on immigration and asylum issues, she sends Robert Jenkin. If it's on policing issues like this, Chris Phelps. But it is absolutely insane, isn't it? That he cannot say if Number 10 signed off on Braverman's article. She says they did. He knew he was going to be taking urgent questions in the House this morning. This is highly unusual, by the way, for this to be happening this early. Highly unusual. Parliament doesn't start this early. This just shows you the impact she's having. Utterly insane. You say Teresa Coffey is pretending to be human. I would query that statement. I don't think she comes across as human very well at all. Sunak's been advised not to have a general election at the same time as the US presidential election. He won't care about that. That combined with the think his speech confirms a major election to be. Nothing confirms it. I still think it's more likely. Yes, he's been advised not to hold one in autumn. Do you know what? If he gets what he wants from it, he won't give a shit. He won't give a shit. That will not form part of their thinking at all. If he wants it to be in October and he can keep the Tory party together that long, then he'll have it in October. I just don't think he can keep the Tory party together that long. I mean, you just look at this. This has to create a huge fault line. I'm just trying to see. I'm just trying to flick through this Guardian thing to see if any. The only Conservative MP I can see having said anything is Theresa Villiers, who is like on Braverman's side by the look of it. She's deeply troubled by the idea of the march going ahead. Why? So, they're going absolutely insane. The Tory party is just, it's like the last days of Sodom and Gomorrah here. Next question. Where's the limit for junior ministers before they decide enough is enough? The fact that both of those individuals, Phillips and Genrich, particularly, don't look for any moral compass in Robert Genrich. The man is a worm. He will happily be every bit as bad as Suella Braverman in return because he wants to be made Home Secretary. When Suella Braverman's sacked, he wants to be made Home Secretary, and he will be every bit as vile. But yeah, so don't look for a moral compass there. Chris Phelps, the fact that he's been willing to work with her, because she's his boss, the fact that he's been able to stomach working with her, again, suggests that regardless of what he might personally think, I don't know, he's quite happy to go along with it all. Letters in for Sonak yet? Well, that's, as I say, I think that's what he fears by sacking Braverman. I mean, we'll have to see how it pans out. We'll have to see how it pans out. But I was up for 2 hours with this last night because I couldn't believe it. Because it's like an impossible situation for Sunak's authority. If he's gone along with this, it's insane. But the thing is, he has gone along with a lot of insane plans, hasn't he? It's like Boris Johnson was alluding yesterday to the fact that Rishi Sunak is doing what Dominic Cummings is telling him to do. And it's like, well, he may or may not be, but you could certainly believe it because it's utterly mad. But by the way, police want the march to go ahead as it organises the protest instead of being chaos. Well, Also, the fact that there's no, Mark Rowley said there's no justification for not letting it go ahead. It's not disrupting anything. I mean, apart from the normal disruption you'll get with any march, there's no intelligence that it's planning on doing anything. Like, if a small group of people tries to piggyback off it and cause trouble, well, that's down to them, and the police can deal with that because the march will be policed. But you cannot stop lawful, peaceful protest. But anyway, never thought I'd say this, but bring back Heseltine and Ken Clark. No, just have a general election. We don't have to have either then. Just have a general election. The most irresponsible Home Secretary in my lifetime. Yeah. Could you imagine you'd have ever said that a year and a half ago when Priti Patel was the Home Secretary? Could you imagine going back a year and a half ago and saying to someone, by the way, you think this Home Secretary is bad? You wait to see the next one. Oh, how could the next one be worse, you would say. And then look what's happened. But anyway, we will have to leave it there. This is naturally going to develop over the course of today. Don't forget to click the like button, of course, and subscribe to the channel. Oh, Guardy, late £2 super chat there. Thank you very much. I've put a link into a description to an article in the Times below, although I've forgotten which article I've put in. I think I've tried to put one of the more nuanced ones in. But thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a great day. And until next time, I'll see you later.